God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. Have you ever found yourself in a place in your life where you realized that you've been making a mistake for a long time and hadn't really realized it? Like saying a word wrong and hadn't really realized it? So every once in a while on the internet, I find like some little article or list of things you thought you were saying right, but you're probably getting wrong. Words, phrases, that kind of thing. And usually when I read this stuff, I feel pretty good about myself. I feel very affirmed in what I know. So I read those lists and I think, of course, I know it's Alzheimer's disease and not old-timers disease. I know it's ask and not axe. I know, even though I can't spell, it is not actually supposedly. And I know it is espresso and not espresso. That's how cultured I am. But then there's parts of the list that come as a big surprise to me. Like for a good 30 plus years, I may have been using the phrase, for all intensive purposes. Anyone with me on this one? And apparently the whole thing is for all intents and purposes. Newsflash, that was to me. And also this one. I always thought people would say, you've got another thing coming. Like, you know, there's always something else coming along. Apparently the phrase is, you've got another think coming. Actually, I would have laughed if I had heard someone say that. I did not know that was correct. Another word that I had misunderstood for a long time was the word prodigal. I always thought that the word prodigal meant someone who left and came back. And so I'm pretty sure if, when our dog got out of the house and ran away for a little while and came back, I'm pretty sure I would have attached the word prodigal to that. Prodigal, anything that kind of goes away and comes back. Apparently that's not an agreed upon definition. That was just something I was freestyling at. But maybe some of you are in the same boat. So I'm gonna explain the definition of prodigal in case there are any of you out there like me who were misunderstanding this word. The dictionary defines it as an adjective, prodigal, spending money or resources freely and recklessly, wasting extravagantly. And the other definition is having or giving something on a lavish scale. So this is where we're getting the word prodigy. You know, like a child prodigy who can do things really, really well. It's not like they do stuff really, really well and then come home. That's not their talents there. They just do something really well. So today in our readings, we have the story of what is usually called the story of the prodigal son. Which is probably why I thought prodigal meant to go and come back. Please help me. I'm not alone in this, right? Does anyone else really think that prodigals go and come back? Some people are nodding. Thank you. All right. One of the most well-loved stories in the Bible, perhaps one of the best-known parables and stories in the Bible. The son going away and coming home again. We've named the story the prodigal son. In the Bible doesn't come with names of stories. So the Bible didn't call this section the Beatitudes. The Bible didn't call this section the Good Samaritan story. The Bible didn't come with stories with names. So we've given the stories names. So I'm kind of hoping that it's okay if I introduce an idea for an alternative name to this story. I would like to read this story with the alternate title, Prodigal God. Not one that leaves and comes back, but rather one who gives extravagantly, who spends these resources freely and recklessly, who blesses us extravagantly, having or giving something on a lavish scale. So here's our story. I'd like to hear that with that in mind. So the man had 2 sons. And the younger one said, Dad, I would like you to give me my inheritance now. I'd like you to split everything in half and give it to me now. The son doesn't say this out loud in the story, but it's almost like he's saying, saying, I can't wait for you to die, Dad, and I'd really like to financially benefit from you right now. I feel like the father gets a lot of credit right now for not giving the answer I might have given at that point. So the dad divided the property between the sons. And a few days later, the younger son gathered everything he had and traveled to a distant country where he squandered his money on dissolute living. And then there was a drought throughout the country. He became in need. No one would help him. He couldn't find a job. The only job he could find was feeding pigs. He was so hungry that the pig food looked really appealing, and he was really hoping someone would give him just a little portion of pig food, but no one did. That's what we call rock bottom. And then he thought, even if I was working at my father's house, I could probably take some bits of the pig food. Why don't I just go back there? So he decides to head back to his father's house. It doesn't say here in the story that he had any intention of apologizing to the father, or he wanted to go back because it was the right thing to do, or he wanted to mend their relationship. It really just talks about pig food in his quest to go back. So he sent off and went to his father. Listen to this part. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion, and he ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. So this landowner did what I imagine would be pretty outrageous for a landowner. I imagine usually if someone's coming far down the road, a landowner would have just waited for that person to approach instead of running down the road. I imagine if the landowner was really curious, he might have sent a slave or a servant out to check this person out to help them the rest of the way. But no, the landowner himself runs to this boy who he sees far off. I can kind of picture him like gathering up his robes and just like Laura Ingalls Wilder sprinting down the path. And so he responds in his prodigal way. And the son said, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. So give him a robe, the best one, and give him sandals for his feet. You get the robe, I get the sandals. And give him a ring for his finger. A ring. Not anything practical, something beautiful. And let's get the fatted calf and kill it. And let us eat and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found, and they began to celebrate. What radical, extravagant love is that? Just welcome that son back even before anything can come out of his mouth. There was no I told you so's. There was no you need to grovel before me. There was just a father welcoming a beloved son home. It's prodigal love. And now here's the second part of the story, which I also think is really interesting and really important. Because this is about the elder son, the one who had done everything right. And I imagine here in the congregation that some of us have been the younger son, where we've taken what we could and gone out and done what we wanted and maybe squandered some things. There may be some squanderers in our midst. There also may be some eldest sons in the midst. People who have just stayed the course and done the right thing and just been steadfast their whole time. And when someone else who did not work very hard, who made poor choices, gets all this favor, they might feel very, very angry, just like the older son. And in fact, what I really believe is that in each one of us, there's probably a younger son and an older son. I know there is in me. So the older son was in the field. And when he came and approached the house, he heard the music and dancing. And he yelled to one of his slaves and asked what was going on. And he replied, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he got him back safe and sound. In this whole summary, the slave has to mention fatted calf. Did you notice that? Apparently this fatted calf is a big deal. I think this is like surf and turf. Your father brought out those frozen Omaha steak fillets elsewhere I'm giving the Father a lot of great love credit because the Father acts in a way that I'm afraid I would not have. The Father said, instead of saying, "You spoiled little kid, come on in here and say hello to your brother," he said, "Listen, for all these," the boy said, "I've been working like a slave for you forever. You've never even given me a goat." I'm pretty sure that's like McDonald's cheeseburger. But when that son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, ooh, he said it out loud, and you killed the fatted calf for him. And the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours." Which was super true, because the son already got his calf, and that's gone. All that I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost, and now he's found. What an amazing, extravagant love that God has for us. To rejoice in the one who comes home. And to not be super angry at the snotty one who put his hands on his hips and would go to the party. It's amazing. And I love that the church is giving us this story right here in the thick of Lent. Folks, we're kind of winding down with Lent. We have one more Sunday of regular Lent before we launch into Holy Week. Isn't that kind of wild? And so before we kind of get into the down and dirty, our church is giving us this Sunday to remind us of the extravagant, prodigal love of God that God has for each and every one of us. God gives us this story in order to remind us that there is nowhere we can stray that is outside the embracing love of God. There are no mistakes we can make. There are no goods we can squander so much that God would stop loving us with his whole heart. That is amazing, good news. Sometimes when we're the older brother, it's kind of hard news to know that God loves all the rest of the people too that much. But that's the God that we have. And so, probably from now until the end of time, we will be mispronouncing words and getting things wrong. But we know that God's love is prodigal. God's love is extravagant and lavish. He blesses us with reckless abandon. And so let us hold fast to that truth, especially in these final weeks of Lent. Amen.